Welcome to the Blueprint Breakers podcast. What is a blueprint breaker? If you live your life outside the typical traditional lifestyle blueprint, you are a blueprint breaker. We are here to start a conversation, to assemble resources, and to build a community. This podcast is for empowered women in midlife and beyond who are preparing for a powerful next era of life. My name is Amy A. Palmer. I am your host and facilitator for our conversations. Sit back, relax, enjoy the show. To stay connected, up to date, and to receive all of our free resources and gifts along the way, join us at community.blueprintbreakers.com. Today's guest is someone who doesn't just talk about breaking the blueprint. She crumpled it up, tore it into shreds, and then booked a one-way ticket. I'm joined by Carole Rosenblat, traveler, writer, journalist, international speaker, and the founder of Drop Me Anywhere. Carole has visited more than 73 countries, often solo, often without a plan, and always with curiosity, courage, and humor. What started as an experiment, letting readers vote on where she'd travel next and leaving within 2 weeks, became a radical reinvention in midlife. Along the way, Carole shed the expectations that she was handed, sold nearly everything she owned, embraced a nomadic lifestyle, and built a career rooted in storytelling, service, and female empowerment. Today, we talk about what happens when the life that you were promised stops fitting, how fear is often louder than reality, why travel can be one of the most powerful tools for reclaiming confidence, and how letting go of stuff, certainty, and other people's projections can actually make your life feel lighter. So if you've ever felt stuck in a version of life that just doesn't feel right anymore, then you're going to want to listen to this conversation. Hello, Carole. Welcome to Blueprint Breakers. It's so good to see you today.
Thanks so much, Amy. You also.
I'm so glad that we met virtually out there in the in the online universe, because I've really enjoyed connecting with you, and I'm looking forward to this conversation today. Before we dive into it, here at Blueprint Breakers, we love to hear a little bit about each woman's journey with the blueprint. I'm curious, in your experience, the blueprint that you were handed as a child, and as a young teenager, in terms of the blueprint that you were supposed to follow, the life you were supposed to build for yourself and what you were supposed to do. I'm curious what that was for you. What was that blueprint? What did it look like?
Well, I'm the youngest of three, and I think I kind of always followed, what is my sister doing? What's my brother doing? All that. My brother always knew he wanted to be a doctor, and my dad was a banker. And I'm a nice Jewish girl from Detroit. And although we weren't religious, it's, you grow up, you get married, you have kids. As I said, my dad was a banker. And I actually went into that when I was 17. I was a drive-through teller, and I had a nice career going for 7 years. I was guaranteed a job as within 6 months as an assistant manager of a bank, and when I was 24.
Wow.
And so at that point, I think it was kind of expected. Oh, Carole's going to be in dad's business. And I was a creature of habit, terrified of change. And then my mom passed away when I was 22. A lot happened that was out of my control. And I think, I grew up a bit and said, what do I want?
So you moved away from the blueprint that you were handed and started to sort of build, design your own, right?
I moved like big time. I actually ended up leaving my job at a bank. I'd created game shows themed to train people on product knowledge and customer service, and it sort of grew. And I had a boss that got my work out there. I left and I went and worked on tall ships from the 1920s and 30s in the Caribbean. So I went to work for Windjammer Barefoot Cruises. So I didn't slowly seg away from the blueprint. I crumpled up the blueprint and tore it to bits and threw it away.
Just dove in head first. I love it. And so I want to talk about this era, this season of adventure and learning and growing and new directions for you. And it seems in what we've talked about and what I've read about with you is a lot of it started with the blog, the Drop Me Anywhere blog, and that it was a little bit of an experiment and a little bit kind of risky. I'd love to hear like that journey, like what led to that, and then we'll talk about where it went from there.
Well, I think it's really right to say it was a change of seasons because I've worked in the travel industry my whole life, from camping adventure tours to high end tours to hotels to cruise ships. And I was working for a cruise line that at the end of my first contract, I was 46 years old. And
Mhm.
I was told I had done this really great job bringing out a new ship and asked where I wanted to go next in the company. And before I could answer, I was told, I mean, at your age, you wouldn't expect to be a cruise director, which was the next job up. And the cruise director was telling me this. And she was 2 years younger than me. And so I knew I didn't really have a future there. So I worked there as long as I was learning and all that. But when I left, I found out I was 47 and it was really difficult to get a job in tourism and hospitality. And I'd worked in corporate meeting management and all that, but that had all changed for the same reason I went back to work on a cruise line is because it's the economy, the recession, all of that. I was on a Twitter travel chat when Twitter was nice. And there was a travel chat. And one of the questions was if you had a travel show, what would it be called and what would it be about? And I said, and I didn't never thought of it. And I said, mine's about unplanned travel because those are the best adventures. And it's called Drop Me Anywhere. And the response was just overwhelming. People were saying, oh my goodness, you have to go fund this, or at the time, Kickstart, and you have to make a pilot. And I wasn't looking to be self employed again. I was enjoying a regular paycheck, but nothing was coming that I was passionate about. So
Right.
I wrote a well known travel writer who I had helped him with a story before and said, hey, can I ask you something? And he's like, go for it. And so I told this to him and he said, oh my God, I love it. I wish I could do it myself. Don't sell it to magazines, go for a blog because then you'll own all the rights. And so I did for lack of anything else to do. I got off with that first vote and I launched it January 1st at 12:01 a.m., January 1st, 2014, and I put that first vote up.
So you just put up a vote of possible places for you to go, and then they would and then all the readers would just choose?
Yeah,
You would
because
go?
for me, some people love planning a trip and get all excited about it and all that.
Yeah.
I don't, except for my tour company and other people, I like planning it, but for myself, no. And that took away one decision is where should I go?
Yeah.
And so the readers at that time, I didn't have any, I was new. And so a friend of mine from Vancouver, Canada, every vote had a theme. This one, it was the first one. It was themed after fellow adventurer Jimmy Buffett. He sang, I got to fly to Saint somewhere.
Mhm.
And, he meant someplace warm, St. Bart's, St. Martin, St. Kitts. So each vote I would put up 5 or 6 choices, maybe a little few more options depending on the vote. And then an other category, you can write in a candidate. And like I said, it was new. I didn't have followers except, friends and family I sent it out to. And so this friend in Vancouver, Canada was always curious what St. John's, Newfoundland is about. It's like an hour and a half time difference from the East Coast and they speak funny.
Mhm.
And so she started an email and Facebook campaign to get everybody else to vote it. It was a write in. And that's how I found myself in St. John's, Newfoundland, Canada in February
Oh my
for
goodness.
the very first vote.
And how was it? Did you like it?
It was cold,
It was
wet, and rainy. And I actually called her in a panic beforehand when I checked out airfares because
Ah.
the agreement was once the vote comes in, once it's decided, then I leave within 2 weeks without studying. And I looked at the airfares 2 weeks before and I'm like, "Oh my god, they're like $1,000. What am I
Mhm.
gonna do?" And I called her in a panic and she said, you already did this vote and did this much work. Just go on this trip, and when you get home, you can always figure out what you're gonna do." And I went and I said, "Oh, there's a book in this."
Mm.
And I'm currently writing it. And it was amazing, especially traveling solo.
Mhm.
You meet so many people because you don't have somebody else to talk to.
Right.
And because if you're lost, and at the time, I wasn't using Google Maps, like that was new. I don't even know if it was going on.
Mhm.
So you ask people, and it got to be where the bed and breakfast I was staying at, the guy that was worked there said, "Everybody in town knows you." Part of this was also not only the website dropmeanywhere.com, but I had a philanthropic website for a project I had done a couple of years before. And I
Mhm.
always vowed to use it again. So I vowed that on each trip, I would find a project, a person, some organization that I could spend a day or part of a day volunteering with and then tell their story. And since Drop Me Anywhere is humor, it's informational travel humor. I like to call it Eat, Pray, Love meets Julie and Julia as told by Carrie Bradshaw or Bill Bryson from a female voice.
Mhm.
But the philanthropic blog, I didn't want to have a laugh in there.
Mhm.
So I ended up serving dinner to, I think, 250, 300 people at the Mount Pearl Frosty Festival with a theater troupe that was raising money for their historic building.
That is so cool. Wow. Yeah. I mean, I love the way you sort of you multiplied the experience, you amplified the experience, and not just visiting a place. Now, there's something that you and I have in common is I know that you also embrace the nomadic lifestyle, and you got rid of like almost everything, your car, belongings, etc. I did something similar about a little over 3 years ago. I'm curious about that journey for you. What did you feel sort of shifted for you when you made that change in your lifestyle now that you didn't have sort of like that fallback?
I think that was the scariest part. Travel
Mm.
was not. Without a plan, no. But that
Okay.
was the scariest part. I debated whether to sell my house or rent it out.
Mhm.
I like the advice my sister gave me is she recommended maybe just renting it out because then I did have a roof to come home from to if I
Right.
needed.
Right.
I did not have furniture or anything in it
Right.
because I sold or gave away those and my car and my clothes. And my business card actually said one woman, two suitcases, and absolutely no plan. And it was good advice, except for at the end of it all, it turns out my renters looked very good on paper, but
Ah.
they were not good and they sort of destroyed the house and all of that. And so I fixed it up and sold it when it was all over. But I guess instead of going cold turkey, it was sort of a way of segging into it. What I found, and I think I learned it when I was in Ireland, because I first did the first year while I had the house, but then it was getting expensive, paying a mortgage, flying round trip. And that's when I decided to do something about that part. But
Mhm.
before I did sell it, they voted that I go to Ireland. A walk in the park was the vote. And it was Phoenix Park in Limerick, Ireland. And this girl I met, she was from California. And as I think I wrote about it, is she was having this trip to Ireland before she returned to work as an out of work actress.
Mhm.
And she had said that she had like gotten rid of everything. And she was a college student. There wasn't a lot to get rid of, but that she was really happy she did. And I so understand then because once I did, it's not just a physical load that I was lightening. It was an emotional load. You don't have to worry, first of all, what do I pack? Because this is what you got and this is what it has to fit into.
Mhm.
And, I didn't have all these electric bills I had to keep up on and water bills and gas bills and the car payment and all of that.
Yeah.
And it was just lighter. I just
Yeah.
felt lighter.
Yeah. I feel similarly. I mean, I just definitely feel lighter and feel very free, and that the possibilities are endless. So,
It's scary to do it.
yeah.
I tell everybody it's scarier to think about doing it than it is to actually do it. And that's with traveling, and I guess with getting rid of everything too, is because you do feel lighter afterwards. Sure. Do I have the perfect outfit for every occasion? No. It's the
Mhm.
good enough outfit. And I
Mhm.
buy things at secondhand stores. So when I have to leave them, it's not crushing.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
do I wish sometimes I'm like, oh, I wish I hadn't gotten rid of that? Well, sometimes. Do I long for my house, my 3-bedroom, 2-bath house? Yeah, sometimes. But life is a trade-off.
Right. Yeah. One of the themes that you talk about, because you're talking about the travel and especially traveling alone and traveling as women, that there is a lot of focus on how to be safe as a woman traveling. And I'll tell you, for myself, that is something that I still deal with, like a mental thing about, am I going to be safe? How safe am I? That sort of thing. And I know that you push back on that narrative. I'd love to hear sort of your thoughts around that and how to help us.
Well, first, can I ask you, do you think, you don't know, but do you think you would feel the same way if you were a man?
I don't think I would. I've always assumed I wouldn't feel the same.
Because we're told that we should be afraid.
Right.
And so, first, I think all of these articles that are about, oh, how to be safe traveling as a woman, like, I mean, there are hundreds, if not thousands. I think probably one writer, one blogger, something wrote about it at some point, and everybody sort of jumped on the wagon. Oh, I've got my views of how to do it. Oh, I can do it. What if we just aren't afraid? And it's just like you are at home. At home, you're aware of your surroundings. You
Mhm.
should be. And so it's the same thing overseas. I will tell you that I currently live in Budapest, and I can't tell you the last time I walked with my well, I could actually. I was in the US. That's when I walked with my keys in between my fingers because we're women, we're always taught that.
Mm.
When I go into the movie theater here, I don't look for the emergency exits right away, but I do in the US.
Mm.
And I once wrote an article called "It's Always More Dangerous Over There," and it came about because of a school shooting. And I used to lead tours in Greece and Turkey, and many, many years ago. And I loved Turkey. And constantly people would say, "Oh, be careful over there." I felt safer there than I do when I go to the US. And so here I walk, I'll go to a friend's house or we'll go out. I'll walk home at 1 in the morning alone, no problem. There's some people in the streets, it's no problem, no fear, nothing. I can only say this is why people need to travel because they need to understand that no country is the greatest country in the world. We can take something wonderful from each country, and guess what? We can find something bad too about each
Right.
one. But there was only one place during the whole Drop Me Anywhere. I've been to 73 countries for work or on my own, many of them solo. There was
Mhm.
only one country that I actually did prepare for ahead of time because the whole thing was travel without a plan. And unfortunately, that was India because they do have a problem with violence against women. So I did connect with women on Twitter that lived there and gave me the number of the emergency police for women and told me how to be safe when getting into a taxi or a car and things like that. But other than that, I like honestly, I walk home 1 in the morning and I don't worry.
Now, does that come naturally for you, or was that over time and lots of travel?
Well, that's hard to say because I've been, traveling or working in travel my whole life almost.
I hear that from a lot of my friends who are from America that are living overseas, I hear the same thing. Now, I just experienced a lot of what you're talking about. I just spent November in Thailand, and I spent the bulk I mean, I had an amazing it was amazing. It was I just I
I
fell
haven't
in
been
love
there.
I fell in love with it. Oh my god, yeah. I mean, I fell in love. And I was also battling fear and anxiety almost the entire trip during every single every leg. And then once I would get to the next place, once I got settled in, I would calm down and feel better. But fear was very present. But one of the things that I learned through this trip was it was an internal problem, not an external reality.
So because we're
Oh,
taught to, because, we're,
yeah,
especially women, "Oh, no, no, you should be afraid." So
right.
that, but also you mentioned that once you were in a place and sort of settled, it calmed. So
Yeah,
again, that's also the fear of anticipatory fear, I call it. So it's, again, scarier to think about doing it than to actually be in it and doing it.
right. Exactly, exactly. And because it was fear of the unknown. I didn't know what I was walking into and, feeling as uncomfortable with the language and stuff. That's what kind of made it happen. But you're right that it's it's inside.
When you get to an airport,
Mhm.
you're so nervous, and this is what I told my neighbor. I'm like, "You're gonna land in Vietnam." He was flying into Hanoi, and I said, "And you're gonna land and go, oh, it's an airport." Signs, there's everywhere. The signs are in their language and in English,
I
wherever
know.
you are, pretty much.
Right.
So, okay, it's an airport. I know
Yeah,
it's just like any other airport for the most
right.
part. But in many places, or most, people are generally really friendly. Here and there, you're gonna run into the crank. And guess what? That's everywhere.
Yeah. You're so right. So I'm glad that you're pushing back on that narrative because that's important. Now, I want to talk about too how the blog and your travel business, it's definitely opened up a lot for you, a lot of doors, a lot of possibilities. Uh, tell us about that. How did one thing sort of lead to another?
So I guess one thing led to another, and one thing led to all, because I never monetized the blog. Now, blogging, it was different then. You didn't get, 100,000 followers immediately and all that. I am actually looking at maybe starting the blog up again, but it was self financed. The blog I used to train as a writer. That was what I did with it. So that's why now, I look at the blog and I'm like, "Oh god, it needs some editing. Oh my." And also, I mean, I try to be gentle with myself, is that I was writing 1,000 to 1,500 words every day. The readers, I wrote first person present tense, so the readers traveled with me, and they also returned. It was ended up being great marketing, because since they voted and chose the locations, they returned every day to see what happened.
Right.
They voted for some reason. Either they love a place and wanted to tell everybody about it, or they didn't like a place and they were just mean and wanted to see what I would do. Or they like the first vote. They've always been curious about a place, so why not send a travel writer instead of reading a travel article that you find that's about it? Is here, I'll send
Yeah.
her there and she can do the recon for me. It just trained me to write. And it also then gave me a bit of a portfolio, so that now I write for National Geographic and CNN and Travel and Leisure and all that. I'm freelance. It was my schooling to be a writer. And the blog got some media attention while I was doing it. I did a lot of interviews, and I also lectured around the world. And one of those in Germany, they asked me to speak on female empowerment, and it got media attention.
Yeah.
And when an interview would be published, I'd
Uh-huh.
get a lot of communications from women
Yeah.
saying, "There's this one big thing I've always wanted to do, and you're making me brave." Generally, those women were over 40 to 35, 40. And I had led tours for some of the big tour companies. And my last tour that I led, I had 46 people on that tour, and me, the guide and manager, me and the driver. And that's too many, I think, to have a good trip.
Mhm.
And of those, I think there were there were 6 single people, 5 of them women. And I
Mhm.
tried to get them together, but and I thought
Mhm.
there's a better way. And also, so many women would tell me, "Oh, I wanna go here, and I try to get my friends together, but we just think everybody can't get their schedules together, and I wanna go."
Right.
Or, "I love to travel, my husband doesn't." Or, "They're like me, not married." Or they're
Mhm.
widowed, or they're divorced, or whatever. So I thought, well, for 20 years, I've been a freelance tour guide and tour manager. So I want to open my own and use the things that I learned from that. But I want small groups.
Mhm.
So no more than 20, but generally 12 or so. And everything is priced on single rooms because people hate paying single supplements. Even though, I do understand the splitting the cost of the rooms, but, I get that. But everything that is advertised for the cost is for single room. I really want to empower women through it. It used to be that we were taught to be catty. I think the men sort of enjoyed watching it, but there's one job maybe at a higher level available in the company for a woman because, we got to show that. And then let's watch the women fight over it.
Mhm.
Well, guess what? We're done with that. We're
Mhm.
breaking that blueprint and we're opening our own companies or we're heads of major companies. So, with men not on the trip, I love men, but with them not on the trip, there's also none of this fighting and all that we used to when we were young. Oh, well, you're supposed to get married and have kids. So let's fight over the man, that kind of thing. We don't need that anymore, especially it's the day and age, but also our age
Yeah.
we're past that crap now.
Yeah.
And so I wanted it for that. And then also I use any vendors that I use, if possible, I use female owned businesses as my vendors to support other female entrepreneurs. It's not always you want to get the price that works for your company and quality, things like that, but whenever possible. And then also, I know so many women, American women generally, because unless you live in New York or Chicago or San Francisco, maybe Boston, you don't use public transportation because there's really not any good thing. But so many other places in the world you do, and it's great. I don't own a car. I don't need to. And so I want to show women, like on our Christmas markets tours, we take a train. It's Germany and Austria, and we take trains. Well, how did I figure out what train we are going to take and how did I get tickets? Or if we're in a city, and how did I figure out to use the metro on this side, which is subway, on this side versus this side, or the
Right.
tram or the
Yeah.
bus? It's lovely to take a trip on a tour and have somebody else do all the planning and the logistics. That's great. And if that's what you want, hey, I'm here for you. But if you want to know these things, I'm also here to show you. And that way you can feel confident that you could do this on your own if you choose to at any time. So it's about empowerment there.
That's amazing. And the other thing that impresses me about how you travel is how you incorporate the volunteer projects in your travel. So you're living in Hungary now, right? You transitioned out of the
Yeah.
nomadic and you've got a home base now.
Sorta, kinda. I
Florida?
actually found Budapest
Okay.
because it was on Drop Me Anywhere.
Yeah.
It was
Okay.
one of the votes.
Uh-huh.
The first vote when I went fully on the road after I, rented out the house and all that, the first vote, I partnered with another blogger who
Mhm.
wrote a blog called Passports and Cocktails.
Mhm.
And she and a partner wrote about cocktails and drinks around the world. And I said, hey, do you want to write a 10 best? And I'll base my blog on your blog. And that way we trade readers and things. So I did that and I ended up drinking Glühwein in Germany, which is fabulous. And then the next vote, I said, now that I'm fully nomadic, let's save my pocketbook and my body and stay in Europe.
Mhm.
And I've been thinking wherever you send me next, it's going to be Valentine's Day. So I've been looking at articles of the most romantic cities in Europe, and I gave them choices. Did not choose Paris. They didn't choose Venice. They chose Budapest, and that was not on my radar. And
Mm.
I came here and they were right. I fell in love with the city. I wrote a love letter to Budapest. So then I was leading tours for others and I would come back here in between. And then when I finally sold and I came here and I've been nomadic around the city. I've lived in all different areas, I guess, fear of commitment. I live in a furnished apartment, but I've gathered some things now. I hate to say I'm settled, even though I've lived here for 7 years.
Right. One of the things that's evident is that you have learned to master pivoting and adjusting and, being spontaneous, sometimes by choice and sometimes by necessity. What have you done to make that possible for yourself?
I think, first of all, there have been a lot of tears. I will
Mhm.
say, it's not just like if you look at any influencer, that's not really the full truth. And as I said with the blog, I was very honest. My sister's favorite article that I've written, and I've written for, like I said, National Geographic and Travel and Leisure. Favorite one is for her is one I wrote for my blog about how I stood on a train platform in India crying
Mm,
because India just got to me.
mm,
So I'm very honest about things because I feel like, and I know it's an issue that people feel they see influencers and all that and feel like they're not living up to things because, well, they're not like that person. And so trust me, you are. You're living the life everybody else is too. And you're going through hard times and you're going through good times. And so are they. And so, yes, there's been tears, all that. But because you know what? That's why my blog is humor. Because travel is fun, but it's not perfect. It's funny. I talk about all my foibles and how I mess up and get lost and all of that. And it can make you angry. It's everything, all encompassing. And so for me, I think having worked in travel and led tours and worked on ships where it's my job to pivot. When, I was leading a tour in a private yacht and I flew with the passengers to Greece and I got there, or to Turkey, and we found out we landed and our agent said, Carol, you got to call the office. The yacht is broken. It can't get here, all of that. And we had to, and the office just said, well, what do you want to do? And this was for, I think, the Harvard Alumni Association. And I worked with our agent, and she gave me options. I'm like, okay, well, let's do this, this. And when we finally got to the yacht at a different location, made a whole day tour out of things, included a lunch, we finally got there. We were having cocktails that night. And one of the guests said, Carol, you lied to us. And I'm like, what do you mean? And they said, well, you told us you had good news and bad news when you explained this to us. And it turns out it was good news and good news. You should always do the trip like this. And we went to someplace we'd never been before.
right.
You just kind of do it and allow yourself the initial shock of whatever's not going right. It's kind of a what other choice do you have?
Right.
And, eat chocolate cake or eat some chocolate, have a glass of wine. And I think also from my time working on ships, that the last cruise line I worked for was Disney, and I headed up a department of 77 people. And I remember there were many nights I would go to my cabin and I was a senior officer, so I had 3 stripes, and I was like, there's no crying. I would never cry on the ship. It was all on vacation. But I would go to my cabin and just go, all right, well, let's go for tomorrow. Tomorrow will be better, maybe. And that was it. So, when all else fails, just try not to think about it for that night and say,
Mm,
I'll deal with it in the morning because maybe your attitude will be different. Maybe it won't. Then you get another day to try.
mhm.
But again, I think I've had to learn few things are fatal.
Right. So I'm curious, Carol, you've had countless adventures. You've reinvented your career possibilities multiple times. You've explored, you've really crafted a very full life path for yourself. I'm curious if you have any thoughts, final thoughts for the other women out there who are also blueprint breakers, or they're stuck in a blueprint that like it's no longer feeding them and they're a little hesitant to break out of it. What thoughts do you have for them?
Well, I would reiterate that few things are fatal. I always say, don't do that whole someday, I hope to. Set
Yeah.
a date. I understand that everyone's situation is different.
Mhm.
And maybe there's a reason that you can't do it right now. First of all, think outside the box and think if you can.
Right.
But if you can't, set a date. And that way you're always working towards that date. And then also is what I found when I did this and what I just explained to my next door neighbor, because he's quit his job, even though he doesn't have another, and that's unheard of. And he's getting a lot of feedback. And I said, what they're doing though is they're expressing their fears. They're projecting their fears onto you. When I did this, same thing is people are just projecting their fears onto you. And you're afraid. It's a valid fear, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. And I would rather regret doing something than not doing it. And that is what I always think about is what if I had this idea and then never had done it, I think I'd probably be sitting here going, I wonder what would have happened,
Yeah.
So I'd rather regret doing it.
Mm. Well said. I love that. And I'm going to make sure that I have information in the show notes for people who want to find out more about you and your company and what you're doing. Thank you so much, Carole, for chatting today. I've really enjoyed hearing just a little bit about your adventures. I look forward to really digging in and finding out even more. Thank you.
Thank you. If they do drop me anywhere, sign up for the newsletter. I will, again, I don't have tours up there, but I will be adding tours onto there. And if I do decide to, do some voting and get the blog going, get the band back together, then those will be in the newsletters too.
Awesome. That sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of the Blueprint Breakers podcast. One woman, two suitcases, absolutely no plan. And a very special thank you to my guest, Carole Rosenblat. Thank you again for listening and sharing this episode with your friends. If you haven't had a chance to do it yet, please remember to follow or subscribe and give us a 5-star rating on whichever podcast platform you are using. Have a great week. Keep on breaking those blueprints and rewriting your own.